Hey there, independent Scientologists. Discover a new perspective to your bridge by visiting ao-gp.org. Get in session with remote auditing using the Theta meter. Are you curious about where you stand? Head on over to ao-gp.org now and take our free personality test. Join the growing group of independent Scientologists today.
Hi, and welcome to another AOGP Scientology Outside of the Church podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Burke. This is season 9, episode 20. This podcast is entitled Thetan Mind Body, and it is a conversation recorded on our iPhone at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning. The muse struck, and we decided to just hit record. And instead of hopping into the studio, I think you'll really enjoy this conversation. Something we've been going back and forth on for a really long time, Scientologirl and I. So enjoy.
Okay, so what you're basically saying is that chemicals... Okay, just explain that whole thing for me again.
Okay.
Because it's something I'm not understanding.
Okay, the brain operates the body through the instigation of creation of particular chemicals that influence.
So dopamine, serotonin, cortisol,
Yeah,
oxytocin, etc.
yeah, along with a lot of other things. I mean, you know, there's a lot going on there. It's like a sort of chemical factory that sends out these chemicals as signals. Okay, now do this. Okay, now do this. That's what it does, but it's based off of restimulation. So if, like, for example, there's a giant sloth chasing us, and the being gets restimulated, the brain says, okay, here is something to motivate you to run really quickly.
Yeah, adrenaline.
Right, adrenaline,
Yeah.
to get out of the situation.
Cortisol.
Right, and then after they get into a cave and they calm down, there's a dopamine rush of congratulations, you did it, 30 points.
Right.
That's
the reward.
That's the reward, but that's also modern day. It's a big problem when you have so many restimulators that abound. The cavemen didn't have a phone with all these apps and things that triggered dopamine, serotonin. You know, I mean, we're under assault of a push button society, like Ellerich talked about in the 50s and 60s, where you've literally seen these tests that they've done in these white jacket environments where if the rat pushes this button, it gets this, and if the rat pushes this button, it gets this, or monkeys or whatever.
So I guess my question is, where does the brain begin and end? Like, how does it tie in with the mind? Because, okay, you always get, like, butthurt about me talking brain. But I feel like it is a large part that should be in Scientology. Now, I understand the fundamentals are the mind, or from the mind, because considerations are senior to the physical universe. The brain is physical universe. However, I don't think we can completely neglect the brain and its effects because, I mean, like I was saying earlier on, ADHD and autism, for example. Like, I know for a fact that I have ADHD, aside from the fact that I was even diagnosed. Like, I check every fucking box. And it is a challenge for me to, live day-to-day life with it. And it's not just about focus issues like, oh, okay, she's reading a page over and over again. Okay, well, obviously she has MUs. It goes way beyond that into things like hyperfixation, into, like complete analysis by paralysis, if you will, like ADHD paralysis.
All right. Well, you come from a different generation than I do.
You think it's generational?
I think a lot of it has to do with being generational, because there are a myriad number of other sources of restimulation that did not exist when I was, they didn't exist when I was, 35.
Well, how do you explain then that you have so many people with all of these quote unquote symptoms, and like it's an exact cluster of symptoms. So there's a bunch of people basically walking around with the exact same things, and we can all relate with those things.
Well, the exact same things didn't exist 30 years ago.
Like, I mean, I could understand, for example, if it was isolated and I just had the hyperfixation.
Right.
Okay, maybe it was something to do with a trauma and then a postulate, and I decided, okay, because of that, I'm going to do this. But when you look at a whole cluster of symptoms, and they correlate with a very specific set of people, and those people are pretty much, driven by the same things, and they lack motivation, and it's a dopamine thing. Because that's the thing. We're talking about ADHD, and it's entirely dopaminic. Like, we don't produce enough, therefore we seek it out. And if things aren't stimulating enough, look, the rest of the population basically has a baseline. We don't have that baseline. We are way, way under that baseline.
Right.
So that's obviously a brain thing. So
right.
Then how would you then go and treat the mind for a brain issue?
Well, like he says, it's Thetan, mind, body, product. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's how it works. So,
okay, but let's take people who are brain dead, okay? They can't realistically go and just, oh, you know what? I hadn't thought of this. Let's just fix it and then everything's fine again. No, they have a problem with their brain. Therefore, their ability is limited. So there are varying degrees. Obviously, brain damage is an extreme, whereas ADHD, not so extreme. But they're still similar in that they both affect the brain. So how do you I mean, you can't just have a postulate and suddenly brain damage is gone. Or are you saying that's possible?
No, I'm saying if you have a switchboard that's not working properly, you may not be able to fix that switchboard, and you have to replace the circuitry in the switchboard in order to have a working switchboard, which is, at this point in technology, they are trying to regrow organs in the body, and they have had success with it. But I don't think at any time within our lifetimes, at least at the moment, unless things change with AI that much, you're going to be able to regrow a person's brain and then put it back in the body and still have the Thetan connected to it.
Right.
Some societies have had that. This society at this point does not.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that there are some instances where the mind can't necessarily be the main focus, where it has to be the brain.
Yeah, well, this is the way this universe works. Okay, to get anything done, to get any work done from a physics standpoint, one thing has to push another thing, that then in turn pushes another thing, and so on. So it's like domino pushing a domino. That is work done by a physics standpoint. So you've got a Thetan pushing the mind, pushing the brain, pushing the body.
Right. So
or not.
I guess my question is like, from everything that we've actually spoken about and the times that I was doing research and stuff like that, and you were like, ugh, brain stuff again, right? What? Where?
Me?
Yeah. I guess what my question is that which of those times was it actually that you were like, this is so silly because you can fix it with just, Dianetics or Scientology or whatever, because we've had a lot of times where I was researching things and you're like, ugh, basically. So what are those times?
What times for?
The times that I have been researching brain, and then you'll walk in and you're like, brains again.
Why would I get frustrated with it?
Yes.
Well, because it's sort of I'll give you an analogy. Somebody says that the only way to survive is to drive a race car really fast. That's the only way to get something done.
Okay.
And so their solution is to drive a race car in a big circle at high speeds of velocity, and that is how they see life.
Okay.
That would be an analogy to that type of a thing, where if you wanted to go through and look through life as the brain, quote unquote, you could. And you could view everything from the viewpoint of the brain, or you could view everything from a Thetan's perspective of pushing the mind to push the body to push the physical universe.
Okay. Now here's my problem with that. I feel like it is very black and white. So for me, I don't believe that the brain is the answer of everything. For example, okay, I have spent the last decade trying to do self-help because I didn't want to go through the psychiatric industry. I did briefly, but then I realized, no, I don't like this shit. And so I developed a strategy where I was just like, I'm just going to educate myself as much as possible. And I went into almost every area I can think of, whether it was neuroscience or it was, and this is just, like self-help. It wasn't like I actually studied with a PhD and all of that shit. It was just to better myself. And so I went into all these areas, and the thing that I found is that there's bits of knowledge that you can apply from everywhere. So I like to take it in a more balanced approach. I don't believe that all things can be solved with the mind, or at least, maybe if we could go back to our original beingness, where we were perfect or whatever, maybe that, we'd be able to just heal ourselves on command as an OT or whatever, because I do believe that considerations are senior. However, I think at this stage where we are at right now, we probably don't possess that power. I mean, it's not a probability. It's factual when you look at how many beings can't do certain things. Now, granted, there are some instances where they can, like the grandmas, lifting cars to save the kid thing. And I don't believe that's all chalked up to be just adrenaline.
Well, it's the consideration is senior to the physical universe and necessity level and all that stuff is what you're talking about.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I've had anxiety, I've had depression, and those two I've realized are totally mind. They're not brain. And scientists have even said, they've proven now that they were wrong originally. Or maybe it was, I don't know if it was proven or if it was theory. Don't fact check me. But I know that they're at the very least working towards proving that chemical imbalances are not a thing. You don't just innately have a chemical imbalance. These things are caused. And I fully 100% believe that, because when I've changed things around, when I've, done ethical work and all of that stuff, when I've had goals, etc., depression, anxiety, gone. Okay. And I've gotten so good at recognizing anxiety and being able to fix it when it happens, that it's just no longer a thing. So the only exception for me is the ADHD. I have tried so hard to get rid of this problem. And we've obviously done, work with in Scientology, and I've done, my own work and stuff like that. So that's why this conversation is so interesting and also important and introspective for me. Long story short, it's just all about balance for me. I don't believe that we should be electrocuting people's brains to get better. I don't believe that we should be, I think what we have to do in terms of mental health is not box behavior and ability together. Because behaviorally, I have been able to solve issues. For example, anxiety and depression. For me, that's a behavior. It's an attitude towards life. You're afraid or you're dreading, etc. It's your emotional state. Whereas ability, intelligence, being able to focus, being able to, all of those things, I think they should be separate, because brains are going to be structured differently from one person to the other. Your memory, for example, is excellent to the point that it's scary when you can, like a song comes on the radio and you're like, that was made in 1989. And I'm just like, how do you remember that? I can't even remember my, 10th birthday or whatever. Like, I mean, okay, probably a lot of you can't, but seriously, this dude is crazy. But that's where I'm at, is that there are certain things that the brain just, you can't fix with the mind. At least currently. You probably could. Look, I'm always saying that anything's possible and all that stuff, but man, it sure ain't easy. And I don't know if we're at that point yet, as a society, as a species, to where we can just like, there's no more ADHD, no more brain damage, no more stroke effects, that kind of thing.
Well, you also have to take into consideration of the viewpoint or the lens that you're looking through things. Okay. And
saying I'm wrong?
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that it's a matter of viewpoint and from where you're looking at it. If you look at it from the 50-yard line and you look to the left and you look to the right, the end zone of an American football field is 50 yards away that way and 50 yards away that way. But if you go 30 yards towards one end zone, now you're 70 yards away from the other end zone. So now it's a matter of viewpoint, of perspective, and anchor points of viewpoints of dimension that, okay, that's a long way to go that way and it's shorter to go this way. And dependent upon the position that a person is occupying a viewpoint, they're going to, and I think it kind of goes without saying, but I'm delineating it anyway, that it's a matter of viewpoint and perspective from where you're looking at things from. And in your case, you're clear, okay, but you're at risk. Per CS Series 73, the non-interference zone, LR8 says you need to get through OT3 as quickly as possible, because at this particular point, you're looking at things from a particular perspective. And the grade chart is nothing but a myriad number of viewpoints from particular perspective.
So you're still of the opinion that if I went through my OT levels, my ADHD would be gone?
I am completely convinced.
I don't know.
Well, you wouldn't, because you haven't done it. But see, that's what I'm saying is from your perspective and your viewpoint, you're looking at the end zone from the 30-yard line of closer to one end zone the other. It's 70 yards that way, and you're like, wow, that's a long ways away. I can't see what it says down there in the end zone.
Do I get my money back if I go OT and then it's still not fixed?
Well, you definitely could make me wrong.
Yeah. I'll go on podcasts and be like, Jonathan, you said this would happen. See, but then it's a hidden standard. I guess it's not so hidden. I'd love to handle this.
It's a hidden standard, but the thing is it still, and the entire grade chart is this way, that LR8 says that people at the lower end of the bridge have no reality whatsoever to the gains that one can get at the upper end of the bridge, because they're not there yet in reality and awareness. And it's not real to them. And you can tell them and tell them and tell them and tell them. And until they get there, and one for one, if we do our job in getting somebody up to the other end of the bridge, they'd come back to us and have always said, I didn't know that I didn't know this. And I really appreciate the fact that you have made me aware of this, and it is not what I thought it was going to be at all. And that's a good thing.
I guess when you look at it, it kind of would make sense in a way. Because first what you're doing is you're handling postulates from the ground up to clear. Mm-hmm. And that's all behavior, because you have, the reactive mind, and it is, I can confidently say that the behaviors that I've had are no longer there. And if they are, it's, few and far between. Mm-hmm. So definitely clear. But then there's the brain stuff, and maybe that's where the operating Thetan part comes in, where you basically are...
You're taking out the via of the body.
You're in control, yes, but you're also in control of your... I want to say brain, like you're the person in charge then, the Thetan, as opposed to just somebody who, I can see where you're coming from. I can, honestly. I couldn't say whether or not that I truly fully accept that. Then you get people like Tom Cruise, who said that he had dyslexia and it was cured. Mm-hmm. So, and look how fucking OT that guy is. He is just amazing. I never really liked Tom Cruise until I actually realized, all of his stunts and all of that stuff, it's all just him. Mm-hmm. Well, most of it is. Mm-hmm. And the things he's done with his life, and how, consistent he is, and he lives life unencumbered. Mm-hmm.
Well, it just occurred to me to give another analogy where, and it's a little more personal analogy, but my mom worked for the phone company for over 30 years. Okay. And she sat at when she originally started, she actually was one of these operators that you would take a cable and you would put it into a socket, and then you would put the socket into another socket in order to complete connections, to have communication from one point in the country to another point in the country. And then it evolved to a 411 thing where people would call in on computers, and she would look it up and she would give them the number that they were looking for. This is long before the internet in the 80s. Okay. And at least the retail internet. And so from her viewpoint, it would have seemed, and it did seem, that it was a miraculous technology that you could take this little device and put it in your hand, and that had a radio in it, and somebody could call you and you could call them, and that you could get on a computer and you could look up this information and you could find a number immediately, cutting her out of the system.
Now, how is that?
Well, what I'm saying is she was looking at it as she was operating for people as a brain, in a way, because they had to call her to complete a call, and then they had to call her to find out a number in order to call somebody else, which is basically what the brain does, is you're using it as a medium, a go-between, in order to get things done in the physical universe. Okay. So what you're doing with Dianetics and Scientology, when you make it clear and then make an OT, is you're pulling the person out of the switchboard, and you're getting them to look at the fact that not only do they not have to use a cell phone or Google or the internet, they just know this stuff and can recall it, and they realize that they don't have to use a switchboard at all if they don't want to. Or they can drop back down into the physical universe and push the switchboard as they need, like in Tom Cruise's case, where he's dangling off the side of an airplane at however many tens of thousands of feet.
So essentially what you're saying is I'm mocking up ADHD. I just don't know it.
Could be. I'm not going to evaluate for you, but it's a possibility.
I mean, saying that I need to go up the OT bridge is in order to fix this, and you're 100% sure, is an evaluation in a way.
Well, I mean, it's an evaluation for everyone, but are you willing to take that risk and not find out? Or do you want to take that risk and find out? Because, you know, unconscious incompetence, conscious competence, you know, is a big gap between those two. It's unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence. And then there's just no above that.
You lost me, but okay.
Well, I'm just saying you don't know that you don't know. You don't know. Or you know how to know, which is what Scientology is. And Dianetics. Again, Scientology doesn't have all the answers. But at the end of the rainbow, the end of the bridge, you do know how to resolve things, even though you don't have all the answers, because you understand how this universe and your universe as a being work, and that you can function in between them. It's a tightrope walk, because you're not of this universe, and that's where your troubles come from. Is understanding it and knowing the rules of how to interplay between one universe to the other. That's the trick that the Scientology Grade Chart gives you the ability to master.
Well, I hope I don't lose my hyperfocus, because it gets me through some shit.
Well, I mean, you know, the ability to focus on something, I would say, comes down to a matter of effort. The further you go up the bridge, the less you have to effort on things. And early on, yeah, focus, self-discipline, focus. Whatever you want to call it, one of those two things, you're going to still have to do. But that's part of the physical universe to a degree. But understanding it and using it with just the right touch here and there, instead of effort, is what we're trying to achieve as one goes up the grade chart.
So, okay, without going into OT data and, you know, the confidential stuff, how, like, what is the main proponent of it that actually, dare I say, cures you or resolves these issues, especially from my viewpoint as somebody with ADHD? Let's take one thing. Let's take the dopamine level thing, where the dopamine levels are just low naturally, and you need more to just function as a normal person. How does the OT level solve that?
Well, you're disagreeing with the disagreements, because you're looking at a composite being in the beginning. You're looking at a composite being in the end.
So we're talking OT3 data.
Well, that's part of it, but honestly, you have to get the OT3 stuff out of the way in order to get to the crux of the problem, which is more so on new aerodynamics for OTs, because you're not the problem. The body's not the problem. It's the composite case that is mocking up the body. That's the problem.
And the composite case would be the stuff you learn on OT3, and
you start to address on OT3, and you really really address it on NED for OTs on OT5.
How many components are there to the composite case? Does he mention?
How many components?
Yeah.
Players, in other words, or different types of things?
Like it's you, it's players, it's what, the body?
Well, the body is misunderstood.
No, I'm asking how many.
Well, you've got the body, you've got the composite beings.
Okay.
You've got yourself.
Okay, so 3.
Yeah, all standing in the physical universe. 1 foot in the physical universe, 1 foot in the theta universe, and therein lies where the hilarity ensues and the comedy begins, because it's a lot of misunderstoods. It's a contrivance, is what it is. It's bungee cords and duct tape. That's what it is, unfortunately. And it seems complex, but due to the 30-something, almost 35, 40 years that LRH spent on this, trying to sort this thing out, he through using himself as a guinea pig, got a lot of it, if not most all of it, sorted out.
So you think that there's there could be a postulate that causes the dopamine to be at lower levels?
Yeah, because you're not. Here's the deal: at the end of it all, you're not just dealing with one reactive mind. Okay, you're dealing with tens of thousands of reactive minds.
Yeah.
If not hundreds of thousands of reactive minds.
But don't get into that.
Well, I'm just the reason why I'm saying this is there's an awful lot of restimulation that is occurring that thinks it is a body. That's the funny thing about it. It's just because you're clear on the first dynamic doesn't mean you're clear on the third or fourth dynamic. And that has a lot more meaning than it sounds like it does. Because for anything to persist, there is a lie behind it. But it's not necessarily your misunderstood or your lie. But this gets revealed to you on the OT levels, and then you go, oh, okay, because you are outside of your control. You're being influenced by other considerations other than your own.
So if somebody had high blood pressure, could they just disagree with that and just continue doing things that would make them have high blood pressure, like salt?
It's interesting that you mention high blood pressure, because there have been many people who have had high blood pressure. Doctors would like you to think that, well, high blood pressure is just something that happens as you get older and you should stay away from salt and all of this stuff. But as one goes up the bridge, especially when you get through newer dynamics for OTs, you will find that a person's heart rate, blood pressure, all come down to a much more reasonable level, because there is this push that is there from the composite case that is bearing down on the person.
Well, I mean, even if you look at it in a more practical sense, if you address the mind, the reactivity goes down. Therefore,
that's right.
All that stress is not going to be there.
That is a direct index and correlation to that. As you remove, just like LRH says, to the degree that you remove bypass charge from the case is to the degree that awareness increases. And to the degree that awareness increases is that you're looking at things as they really are. So they no longer restimulate you, whether it's your restimulation or something else's restimulation that directly influences you. It would be like living with someone who was Chicken Little, and you were fine, and the person that you lived with came into you and went, hey, the sky is falling. The sky is falling. And you're like, oh, fuck, this again? And they do this all the time. And of course, it's going to raise the body's blood pressure because you're going to get frustrated. You're not going to want to deal with it. But this is quite literally what is happening with the composite case all the time. When you remove that influence on the OT levels, you have a placidity that was heretofore not possible for you from your viewpoint on the 30-yard line. Now you're at the middle and you see 50 yards this way, 50 yards that way. You own that whole area of that football field, down to the micron, and it's peaceful.
Okay, so I've thought that maybe ADHD can be sort of related to addictions. So, for example, my mom, when I was in her belly, she was smoking. Mm-hmm. She was a smoker. That apparently can be
harmful to a fetus.
Harmful. Okay. So now, here I am, born. I have ADHD, and caused by mom. So therefore, structurally, it changed me. So you're saying that if I go on the OT levels, it can change the structure of my brain? Am I getting that correct?
Yeah. It changes the structure of the body. Like I said, they used to do in the 70s, they used to take Polaroids of people's faces and cut them into two pieces in hemispheres. And they'd do it at the middle of the bridge, the bottom of the bridge, the top of the bridge. And you would see people's faces change completely because it altered the body based off of the auditing that they had received. Primarily, well, I mean, Dianetics and Scientology both, they do affect it, but Dianetics significantly early on, because it was the first thing that people did, is you actually did standard Dianetics as a first order of business on the grade chart in the early 70s.
Did you have any non-behavioral difficulties that were addressed on the OT levels, personally?
Non-behavioral?
Yeah. So
I didn't like people.
Well, that's behavioral.
Is that how I treated? I stayed away from people.
Yeah, but that's kind of behavioral. That can be caused by trauma and isolation. And
okay, so give me an example of non-behavioral.
Like ADHD, like it's not a behavioral thing. It just the symptoms are behavioral, but the actual cause, the actual thing, is it's a disability. So did you have any disabilities? Were your abilities enhanced in any way?
All of my abilities were enhanced, but I didn't have any disabilities per se. But I'm sort of an unusual.
What abilities were enhanced?
What abilities were enhanced?
Yeah.
I would say my persistence on a given course.
Well, that's behavioral again, though.
Well, what is not behavioral?
So
how is ADHD not behavioral?
It's not behavioral because...
But I'm not being combative in saying that.
When I say behavioral, I mean more in a sense of emotional stuff. So a lot of people, they don't stay on a given course because they're not motivated, because maybe they're PTS to somebody, or, they might just think, oh, this is stupid, or like they have MUs and then they blow, that kind of thing. Whereas with ADHD, it's not really any of those things, because even when I've taken a look and I've written down OWs, when I've DPTS'd and all of this stuff, those issues still remained. So therefore, the big problem with ADHD is that it's executive dysfunction. So I can go in the office and plan, okay, this is what my day is going to look like. And then by the end of the day, get completely sidetracked and realize I've forgotten about 5 other things that I should have done. So there's memory impairment. There's ability to focus. There's, all of these things.
That's my
Those
point.
aren't behavior.
They're not.
No.
They're not behaviors.
No.
If you can't remember something, that is not a behavior.
Well, it's primarily because of why. Okay, so with you, right, it could have been an emotional issue, because, like I said, if you're in bad, I mean, how motivated are you if you're having a bad day to do something? Whereas if you're, having a good day, so it all depends on emotion. If you look at the tone scale, you'll see obviously at the top there's action and at the bottom there's basically apathy, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, it's not that. It goes beyond that, because it's not affected whether I'm having a good mood or a bad mood day. It's still going to be the same.
Yeah, so but that's a behavior.
Yeah, but okay, ignore the fact that I said behavior. Okay. Just think of emotion.
Okay, emotion.
Yeah.
And emotion is used to get a desired result in the physical universe.
Yeah, but that's...
Or not.
Yeah.
Because you don't get a result if your emotion is so low and you're being objects, you're not going to get anything done.
Right. But
so
now what I'm saying is that, like I said, the stuff that I experience is not dictated. It has nothing to do with emotion, because I still can't remember shit, whether I'm having a good day or a bad day. I can't focus whether I'm having a good day or a bad day. Those are the things that I'm talking about. So, like, has anything non-emotional been affected with you since going on the OT levels?
That was non-emotional?
Yeah.
Well, my awareness has increased tremendously.
Okay.
So I am aware of things before they happen, days in advance.
Okay.
And you can't you have to step outside the confirmation bias of the physical universe to go, is this true? Is it not true? Is it true? Is it not true? Because the physical universe operates off of a timeline. And if you don't have any clues to something happening, you're sitting there waiting for the other shoe to drop in order to validate it. And you can't do that. You have to think within the confines of the theta universe and just know and accept that this is going to happen, and you can make a change in the physical universe.
Do you believe you've gotten smarter since
Oh, God, yes.
the OT levels?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Interesting.
But see, what smartness is different than awareness. It's, okay, you look at something in the physical universe, and smartness could be almost implied as, okay, how do I do the Rubik's Cube faster as opposed to slower? That would be considered smartness. Well, what is that? Well, you're manipulating the physical universe in one way versus another in order to get it done in a shorter period of time.
I think there has to be some kind of awareness in order to be intelligent, because you're able to duplicate a reality outside of yourself.
But awareness is above being smart.
Yeah. No, awareness, I think, encompasses lots of different things.
Yeah.
But it's not just intelligence, for sure.
Yeah, it's smart to unlock all of the doors and open them before you pull the car out of the garage, and you open the garage and you open the outer gate. We have gates here in South Africa, so you have
but
two
awareness
gates.
could be
That's
being
smart.
aware. Awareness, though, could be being aware of the potential threats, therefore being smart enough to do that.
Right, but see, the thing is that smartness is taking mental image pictures and thinking with them and going, okay, this is what happened that time, I shouldn't do this, and this is what happened that time, I shouldn't do this. But if I do this, this and that won't happen, and this correct thing will.
So you're saying it's knowledge versus an infinite well of awareness, consciousness.
Yeah, because you have
a better word to tap into.
Yeah, because when we've talked about
knowingness versus knowledge, basically.
Yeah, there's two different things.
Yeah.
You can operate with pictures, and you can think with pictures, but that's some sort of a middle ground, and that's good. The lower ground below that would be everything is dangerous. I can't do anything. I have to be careful, and you're in fear all the time. The opposite end of that would be not operating with pictures and just knowing and perceiving, and not having to sit there and filter through a database of pictures. This happened, that happened, this happened, that happened, this happened. Okay, this is what I got to do.
So I guess back to my question then. So it's obviously with me not a case of intelligence, because I feel like I'm fairly competent.
You're ridiculously intelligent.
Oh, thank you. So then it becomes a case of awareness then, in the case of ADHD.
Right. Well, and I think the case with a lot of people that have ADHD is they're almost too aware, and they get in their own, if I may even use a root word of awareness, they get in their own way. And they're thinking about stuff too much. Think, figure.
Instead of just trusting the gut.
Instead of just trusting it and trusting the process, they're constantly reevaluating, and they're stuck in this feedback loop. That's what I see with lots of people that have ADHD.
That would honestly make quite a bit of sense, because one of the things that we have is this need for perfection.
Yeah.
And if you're evaluating everything, right? If you're looking at the knowingness, like obviously absolutes aren't attainable, so therefore we actually regress because we want that perfection, but we know that absolutes aren't attainable. So we're technically doing what I've been doing in this podcast really is we're substituting that knowingness for the brain, for thinkingness and ability in that way and the deficits and all of those things. So I do see your point. I do when I really think about that.
Right, because you have, as a Thetan, you have to drop down into the physical universe and go, okay, I'm going to go grab this scrapbook, and I'm going to take this scrapbook, and I'm going to tell the brain, you see this scrapbook? Look, this is what's going to happen. Okay, and the brain goes, oh my God, and sends out a bunch of chemicals and everything, and that throws the body into a panic or...
Well, that's anxiety, yeah.
Well, I'm just using that as because it is a reactive mind. The reactive mind is what drives the brain and its chemical factory in order to get the body to do something.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a stimulus response mechanism.
So are things that are highly dopaminic and addictive, are they part of the reactive mind?
Yeah, they're all reactions.
So even if it's a good feeling, it's still
a reaction in the physical universe, of which you're constantly making a 54 perception, 4K, 8K, whatever you want, picture of it. And then you're recreating later on down the road to use again in order to now restimulate in a new unit of time. And this is where the problem begins, is because you're just used to creating this constant film and then going back and re-evaluating it and re-editing it and adding new significances to it and all of this stuff. And Thetans are very capable of being and doing anything.
And
they can be a picture.
You know what's very interesting, cycling back a little bit to that awareness thing, is that do you know how many people with ADHD have sensory issues? Which means that their perceptions are higher, which means that awareness is higher. Mm-hmm. Because perception and awareness, it's
yeah. You can have acute perceptions in any image because you've added a higher significance to it because of.
No, I'm not talking about pictures now.
Okay, but I'm just saying a perception. If you're perceiving something, how can you perceive something without having a picture to go back and compare to? You've got to have a comparable datum. And so if you've got it out of whack and there's a certain smell or a certain sound or a certain disorder, that's a perception that you've added a significance to, but that requires a picture in order to do something with it.
Well, I'm talking about look, would you say awareness and perception is the same?
No.
You wouldn't.
No.
So you would not say that your ability to perceive is equal to how much awareness you have.
Depends on whether you're using a body or not. But see, that's what we're really talking about here.
Okay, but here's the thing though. Overts make one blind, right? And essentially almost the entire bridge deals with overts, whether you really want to look at it or not. Because anything that's, any ARC break, service factor, you're compensating all of those things.
Right.
So if overts make one blind, okay, that is a perception. Therefore, awareness.
No, it is an awareness. A perception, if you're perceiving something, to perceive something, if you're looking at a ship at a distance, you're using binoculars or something to amplify, closen that object to you so that you can perceive it better. You're using a via. As a Thetan, you don't need to perceive anything. You just know. Okay? To perceive something, you have to go stick your finger in the mouth and stick your finger up in the air and go, is the wind blowing?
So perception is one lower than awareness.
That's right. If not more. We proved that in our podcast with the group processing not that long ago, last week. There's a difference between perception and awareness. You have to drop down in the physical universe to perceive. To be aware, you don't have to do that. It's sort of like, okay, what's the temperature out? Okay, I'm going to trust the thermometer, and the thermometer says it's 20 degrees Celsius or
So we're
80
basically,
degrees.
by perceiving, we are measuring. We
You're-
are adding a
you're-
metric.
You're adding a metric and dropping down into the physical universe. Have you ever said, I need to get up at 7 o'clock, and you woke up at 7 o'clock and you didn't set a timer?
Yes.
That's an awareness. When you're relying on something else, you're looking at something else for a validation of the fact that that is the case, which means you're dealing with the physical universe, which is an alter is, so therefore it persists. You as a being do not have that alter is. You have no matter, energy, space, or time. So you can drop down and perceive, or you can be aware. That is the difference between clear and OT.
That's very, very interesting.
But one who has not experienced that would go, I don't know. Because you're so used to one mode of operation as opposed to another. That's why he says people who have not done it are not aware of the fact that this reality, if you will, exists. You would never know without having been there. If you'd never been to Japan, you could say there's no such thing as Japan. It's just a story. It doesn't exist. And then you get there and you go, there's Mount Fuji.
You know, going in on this chat, I was totally convinced that I was going to convince you that the brain has a lot more significance than you think. And I feel like you've just done like a complete 180 on my mind.
On your mind or on you?
Well, you've changed my mind.
I changed your viewpoint.
Yeah, changed my viewpoint, yeah. So
You change your mind. I can't change your mind.
would you stop?
I'm serious. That's how this works. I can't change your mind. Only you can change your mind because your mind is a consideration full of consideration.
Well, anyway, the point is that you've given me quite a bit to think about.
Well,
Quite a
good.
bit to think about. I don't know where it begins and ends, though. I need to, I need to think about it.
Well, as with anything else in the physical universe, it is not the destination, but yet the journey that is important.
I feel like you're being sage.
Well, I'm just, and that's the beauty of it. It's the probably the most fun journey a being can ever have, and all LRH does, and all I do, as well, is I'm just saying, here's what the old man says, and if you do this, you get this, and my job is to make sure that it is overseen and applied correctly, so that you can get out of it what he says that you can get out of it fully.
Well, let me tell you something. If I do get, if I do go on the OT levels and it solves this problem for me, I'll be fucking stoppable, man. I will run for damn president of the United States. I will fix this fucking world.
Well, you have to be an American citizen to
hello, green cards.
No, you have to be an American. Well, you have to be. I believe you have to be born.
Wasn't Obama
I'm
from
not
Kenya
sure.
or something? I don't know.
That may not be the case, but I forget. But I think you have to be born in the United States in order to be an a president. But yeah, but I get you.
Yeah,
unstoppable.
Because this for me is my biggest issue by far. I mean, and it seeps through in everything, consistency, all of that. And how, there've been so many times that I've thought, oh God, I just can't complete the cycle of action. I must be PTS. And, it's been very frustrating for me. And then we do the OCA. The OCA is fine. I'm not PTS. And, tried to spot suppressors. It's not there. So whatever shit's going on with me in terms of ADHD or whatever the fuck you want to label it as, if it does get sorted out, man, world watch me. Look out, I'm coming.
Well, I've enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been very interesting and enlightening.